By 1970, Daiei was falling apart. Years of bad management had gutted the studio, and the Japanese film industry as a whole was shrinking thanks to television pulling audiences away from the theater. At that point, the Gamera series was pretty much the only thing keeping Daiei alive. Gamera vs. Jiger was the sixth entry, and the production ran into money problems almost immediately. Director Noriaki Yuasa even had to go directly to the studio president and beg for extra money just to build the miniature sets and effects that the movie needed. The big hook this time around was the 1970 World's Fair in Osaka. A lot of the film was shot at the actual Expo grounds, which gave it a unique setting compared to the other Gamera movies, but filming there came with a catch. Expo officials didn't want to see their brand new buildings being trashed on screen, so Daiei agreed that Gamera and Jiger wouldn't destroy any of the Expo structures. Screenwriter Niisan Takahashi even defended the decision, saying it would have been in bad taste to show Gamera wrecking the World's Fair. He worried that kids might start resenting Gamera as the monster that destroyed the Expo. So, in a weird way, Gamera vs. Jiger is probably the only kaiju movie where the monsters had to follow a no-destruction rule in their contract. The movie hit theaters in 1970 as a double feature with the samurai adventure, The Invisible Swordsman. Hard numbers on its box office are tough to find, but by then the series was clearly losing steam, and Jiger didn't change that. It did fine with the kids, but wasn't nearly enough to pull Daiei out of its financial spiral. Outside of Japan, American International Television picked it up for US syndication under the title Gamera vs. Monster X. Decades later, it even got the Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment in 2022. Like most of the late Showa Gamera films, it has the reputation of being a cheap kids movie that's entertaining in a goofy kind of way. But I found myself actually kind of loving this movie. It has some bizarre moments, it has some really good moments, and some really bad, so let's dive in. This is Gamera vs. Jiger. At Expo 1970 in Osaka, a mysterious statue called the Devil's Whistle is unearthed, unleashing the monster Jiger. Gamera tries to stop her, but is poisoned when Jiger implants an egg in his chest. As Gamera lies near death, children pilot a mini-submarine into his body, discover baby Jiger, and kill it using white noise. Revived with electricity, Gamera battles Jiger again at the World's Fair. She unleashes quills, heat rays, and her stinger, but Gamera adapts, smashes her tail, and finally kills her by impaling her with the Devil's Whistle before returning her body to Wester Island. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I loved Gamera vs. Jiger. Right off the bat, one of the strongest elements in Gamera vs. Jiger is how it uses the Expo grounds as its main setting. It gives the film a visual identity that actually stands out from the usual recycled cityscapes or the same cramped spaceship interiors that we're so used to at this point. The Expo adds color, scope, and energy to every frame. The architecture and displays showcase the optimism of the period, a forward-looking view of technology that grounds the monster mayhem in something tangible. What also works is how the Expo setting folds directly into the story itself. Gibo, the envoy from Wester Island, frantically warns the Expo organizers not to tamper with the Devil's Whistle, but his warnings fall on deaf ears. That moment of arrogance sets everything in motion. The theme of arrogance runs through the film in a way that feels sharper than anything in the last two entries. I would go as far as to say that the last two movies didn't even have a theme in mind. It was just mindless entertainment. For Gamera vs. Jiger, you can read this film as being a commentary on cultural blindness, outsiders dismissing the knowledge of the people who actually live with these traditions. The Expo is supposed to be this celebration of the world and multiculturalism, but it's closer to something like Disney's Epcot or It's a Small World, where everything is just sunshine and rainbows, and it's a very surface-level understanding of these foreign cultures. The Wester Islanders know the Devil's Whistle isn't just some ancient artifact to be displayed like a prize, but the Expo officials wave it off in the name of progress. There's a subtle irony here, since the Expo itself is supposed to be a monument to human achievement, yet it's that same faith in advancement that blinds them to the dangers of their own ignorance. Compared to Gamera vs. Virus and Gamera vs. Giran, this feels like a massive leap forward. Those films stranded their human characters in plots that revolved around kids exploring spaceships with no dramatic tension whatsoever. But here, there's real conflict driving the story, and it ties directly into the larger themes. It's not just monsters smashing things for 90 minutes and then that's the movie. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Aren't you a guy that talks about giant monster movies on the internet? Shouldn't you just care about the fight scenes and that's it? And to that I say no. These are real movies, and as a fan of them, I want them to be taken seriously, so you have to critique them in good faith in order to do that. You can't just blindly love a movie because you like giant monsters. You have to be critical of things that you love because you want them to be better. If you dumb down kaiju movies into just giant monsters hitting each other, I don't really think you're a fan, and I don't really think that you want these movies to be taken seriously by the general public. So that's why for a movie as dumb as Gamera vs. Virus, I'm still critiquing it like a real movie, as some people in the comments were actually upset by me doing. So, in short, the reason I take these movies seriously is out of love for them, because they deserve to be taken seriously. Getting back to the movie itself, I find it really funny how the Expo ends up being treated like the crown jewel of civilization in the middle of a full-scale monster attack. Whole city blocks are leveled, thousands of people are probably dead, yet every character acts like the real tragedy would be if the Expo got even scratched. It plays almost like a running gag. You can buy it when the kids obsess over it because it fits their perspective, but the adults being just as dismissive of the widespread destruction feels really strange and off-putting. It's one of those moments where the priorities of the filmmakers are obvious, and while it makes sense for the target audience, it comes off as being oddly detached from the reality of the destruction that we're watching. It cracks me up how Gamera vs. Jiger once again pairs a Japanese kid with a white kid. This is the third film in a row that runs with this setup, and by this point it feels impossible to see it as anything but a studio mandate. You can practically picture the memo from the American backers saying, make sure there's at least one white kid for the US audiences to latch onto. The formula is just so obvious that it borders on parody. It's as if Daiei had a checklist and right under giant monster suit and miniature buildings, there was a line that read, insert token white kid. It's hilarious. To me, what makes it so funny is how transparent the whole thing is. The series bends over backwards to justify why this random foreign kid is just hanging around, and it never feels natural. You can almost sense the production trying to bridge markets in real time, but instead it ends up creating this weird cultural oddity that has aged in the most amusing way possible. The kids here actually do a decent job of not being obnoxious, aside from the constant shouting during the final fight with Jiger, where they treat Gamera like he needs a pair of backseat drivers during combat.
Gamera, don't give up! Keep going, Gamera, get it! Come on, Gamera! Gamera! Gamera, use your fire! That's good, Gamera! Let's go! Fight on! Careful, Gamera! The needle!
Like after a while, you're just like, shut the fuck up.
Gamera, put it in the air, up in the air! Gamera! Come on, you can do it! Get it up in the air!
Even with that though, they feel like the most balanced child pairing that we've seen so far. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that their involvement doesn't just amount to them wandering around aimlessly like in Virus or Giron. They participate and take risks, and the danger they face feels real enough to create some actual tension. Comparisons to the last two films make this stand out even more. Virus and Giron were so flat in how they handled the kids that this feels like a massive improvement by default. There's a baseline level of effort here that makes the human side of the story watchable. It's still a kid-centric storyline, but it functions, and in the world of Showa Gamera, that's almost a victory in and of itself. Jiger is a great monster. The design stands out, and the English dub giving her the title of a demon from hell adds a pulpy, almost mythic edge to the character. The first fight between Gamera and Jiger is a highlight, with a level of brutality that feels more intense than usual for the series. I like that she's able to actually sideline Gamera for such a long stretch, which opens the door for extended destruction sequences where Jiger has the stage all to herself. It gives her more presence and makes her feel dangerous in a way that some of the other villains never quite managed. There's also a body horror element in Gamera vs. Jiger that lands surprisingly well. Jiger infects Gamera and leaves him essentially impregnated, which is a shocking turn for a film aimed at kids. The whole sequence predates Alien by nearly a decade, and the parallels are hard to miss. The act is invasive, unsettling, and far more vicious than anything we've seen from Gamera's Rogues Gallery up until this point. Jiger being the first female kaiju in the franchise makes this angle even more striking from a thematic point of view. Her abilities revolve around reproduction, but the film twists that into something grotesque. Instead of nurturing or protective qualities, reproduction becomes a weapon, a way of corrupting the opponent from the inside. It turns Gamera's struggle into something more disturbing than just a simple defeat. His body is compromised, and the kids literally have to travel inside of him to fix the damage. That decision makes Jiger stand out in a very meaningful way because she embodies themes of invasion and corruption, but with a biological edge that feel unique to the series. The infection plotline just adds so much to the movie, and it makes her threat feel inescapable. Out of all the villains in this era, she feels like the most dangerous because you know that she could very easily knock Gamera out and then multiply herself via forced impregnation. It's wicked stuff for a kids' movie. The sequence where the kids shrink down in a submarine and explore inside Gamera is fantastic. It has the same surreal educational sci-fi vibe as something like Disney's Body Wars. That's the second time I referenced Disney here, and I don't know why. This movie just kind of has a Disney World vibe to it. The discovery of the baby Jiger living inside Gamera adds a lot of tension, and watching the boys have to deal with it is one of the movie's best scenes. It honestly kind of feels like something out of the Goonies when they're exploring around the inside of Gamera, and then suddenly they see this monster, and it becomes like a 1950s sci-fi romp. It's great stuff. Though the most shocking moment, at least for me, was Jiger's death scene, which goes way harder than you would expect. Gamera impales her with a fucking statue through the skull, like a vampire being staked. It's violent, sudden, and grotesque, and the film actually pauses to let that sink in. There's a beat of silence where everyone just stares in complete and total disbelief, and it sells the brutality of that final blow. Like, oh shit, Gamera just did that. However, throughout this movie, the pacing can definitely feel uneven, with most of the big monster action being stacked towards the beginning and the end, and normally I'd knock a Gamera film for following that structure, but it works here because of how the downtime is used. Gamera being incapacitated still matters because the kids are literally inside him. Pause, that sounds really bad. They're in his body with a you get it, you're watching the video. What I'm getting at is the movie keeps him present and in focus when there's not fights happening. In a strange way, this might be the Gamera movie where he gets the most focus because everything revolves around him, or at least his body, his condition, and his eventual recovery. This is the most alive that Gamera has felt since maybe Gamera vs. Gaios or Gamera vs. Barugon. Alright, look, I'll be completely transparent here. I went into this dragging my feet. I kept putting this retrospective off because I remember the later Gamera Showa films being a blur of cheap sets and half-baked kids' plots. I was convinced this would be another slog, but sitting down with it again completely flipped that expectation. Gamera vs. Jiger turned out to be a diamond in the rough, a movie that remembers these stories can still have drama, spectacle, and actual themes without drowning in childish nonsense. This entry fixes nearly every problem that dragged down the last two. The visuals have ambition, the characters have personality, and the story doesn't feel disposable. By the end, I realized I wasn't just relieved it wasn't bad, I was actively enjoying myself. Out of the Showa era so far, this might be the one that impressed me the most, and I could see myself revisiting it long after this retrospective series is over. And with all that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick, you're watching Firewood Media. This is part 6 of my massive Gamera retrospective project. Stay tuned because I'm going to be essentially combining Gamera vs. Zigra and Super Monster into one big video. It's just easier that way since I don't have much to say about Zigra or Super Monster, so I'm just sort of combining the two. It's going to be probably about 30 minutes, I don't know. After that will be in October. I'll be doing a bunch of horror Halloween type of videos. I'll be talking about Creepshow, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and then I'll be posting a brand new short film on Halloween, October 31st. October will also mark the return of the retrospective series for Godzilla. So Return of Godzilla will be out, I believe, October 1st is what I'm kind of aiming for right now. That video will be made available to channel members first, so if you want to see it as soon as it's out on the channel, become a channel member. It's just $1.99 a month. Their names are listed right here, by the way. Massive thank you to them for making videos like these possible. We have a members-only podcast that is live right now. We have one episode. We're going to film episode 2 eventually. The goal is to make 2 episodes a month, make it a bi-weekly podcast. I think I used bi-weekly right. I don't know. Either way, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.